Welcome to the Boxy Babes podcast, newly rebranded from the Cosmic Curtain. The name might look a little different, but we're still bringing you all the news and reviews from Broadway and locally here in Michigan that you've come to expect. In this episode, we will be continuing our Clue live on stage discussion, turning towards the technical side of the show. But before we dive into this episode, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms at Boxy Babes. Spoiler warning, we will be discussing Clue live on stage and the 1985 Tim Curry film it's based on. So if you've not seen this film or this show, which is currently on its North American tour and want to avoid spoilers, save this episode and come back to it later. Thank you again for joining us here at the Boxy Babes podcast, and we hope you enjoy. So on our last Clue episode, we broke down the stories and characters of this farcical stage show. However, on this episode, we're going to be talking about some of the technical aspects of what you can expect from Clue, from acting to humor, set design, and then how, or if we would see this again, and what we would rate this. So without further ado, RJ, what did you think of the acting of the show?
Oh, I mean, I thought it was well done. I can't think of anything specific currently that stood out to me, like either on either side in regards to like super, super well done or like super not great. There were a few comedic timing things that felt a little bit off.
Okay.
But I think that was based on the lack of audience engagement, maybe in those times. Like a joke just didn't land right, or the pause after the joke or in between was just like too long and uncomfortable. But
yeah, there was a few of those. I remember one specifically with Miss Scarlet where she said something and she like she looked out towards the audience, and we did not respond the way that she either wanted us to or that we were supposed to. And it was nearly silent as the joke went off, which I know sometimes happens. But yeah, it definitely, there was a few times where that just hit a little odd.
Yeah, and I know that generally the one that you're speaking on, and I'm trying to remember if it's because the line got like slurred. Or there was a couple times where lines either got slurred or like stuttered, like they stumbled through it, and then it directly affects the joke.
Sure.
And so I think that might have been one of those times. Could be wrong, but
part of me wonders too, because I know that Professor Plum, who Graham Stevens, who I got to interview, he was new. It was his first time. That was his first night ever being a principal role in the show. And when you pull up the cast and creatives on the website, still there's a few roles that actually are different. Colonel Mustard being one of them. Mrs. White is different than the one we got, and of course Professor Plum. And so, 3 out of the 6 characters that were mostly on stage, 3 out of 7 if you count Wadsworth, are either new enough that they're not on the website, and or that was their first performance of the show, which maybe that was leading to part of that.
Yeah, I think, of course, chemistry can be everything, especially in a non-musical. And in a show that is such a small cast. And the physical comedy is also a huge thing. And once again, like if you've had minimal rehearsal with someone and you're doing physical comedy, and a lot of it is in the dark, by the way,
sure,
that's working hard. Even though it's choreographed the same and everything is down to a movement, there's still a level of even distrust to yourself.
Sure.
Because your nerves, your heart's pounding, especially if you're, opening the role for the first time, or opening in a role at all on a national tour, things of that nature. Like so many things can be going on that can affect, a lot of the show, they're all hanging on each other. They're running around with each other. There's fight scenes. again, much of it in the dark,
Yeah,
and uh, physical running involved. Like I give bad props to folks when they especially when they join tours too, because you have half the cast who know each other, they work together, they know what they're doing, and then you're just trying to, even with your rehearsal time, it doesn't compare to months or weeks of showtime together.
sure. I had just I just interviewed somebody from Come From Away, and they spoke on how they had been with the production for over a year now, and they saw a cast change where half the cast left. And like part of the conversation was it changed so much because you no longer can just like do muscle memory because you don't have the same muscle memory with these people. You don't have the same reactions. You don't have that. So it makes sense that like there is that level of distrust, probably for everybody on that stage, a level of a little bit of uncomfortableness, of not being comfortable around each other because you've just, if that was their first night together, that had to take a lot of energy to produce.
Yeah, I mean, just the smallest mannerisms and placements, especially in a show like this where it matters. Like, where did you put this prop? Is it 6 inches to the left of where it used to be?
Yeah,
Like those tiny little things, where exactly are you standing? Like, yes, these things are all blocked, they're all choreographed, but the way that a person leans, the way that a person, are they left-handed or right-handed? Are they standing more to the center of the spot or to the left or to the right? Like that all directly contributes to the way in which the whole flow of the show can change.
absolutely. And that's not including for things that just don't go right. Like there was, I don't know if you noticed, but in the multiple ending scene, Mrs. White, when she went to go open her purse, it would not open for her to get the object. And you could tell that like she was slightly thrown off, not knowing what to do with that scene. And again, if this was her first time because she's not on the website, that probably had to be very like discombobulating, like almost like an anxiety of being like, I'm on stage for this performance and it's not going the way it's supposed to go.
Yeah. And I mean, and once again, like these people are professionals. They've done this probably the majority of their lives in different facets. But it doesn't matter how long you've done it or, you know, what you're doing. Like in that moment, the only thing is that moment.
Yes.
Like I had a similar interaction in uh, Sweeney Todd. I was supposed to get handed a coin by a cast member, and it's a pivotal moment in the scene. Like him paying me is important, and
Yep.
for some reason, he didn't have the coin, or it wasn't in the pouch when it was supposed to be,
Sure.
and so for a moment we just kind of stood there in awkwardness, and then he ad libbed a line to continue the show to go on, and we did. Um, but it's still, you could tell it threw all of us off because it affected other people on the stage. And so in that moment, you're not only still trying to stay in character and be calm and collected, but you have to think 5 steps ahead to be
For
like,
sure.
okay, this is going to affect this, which affects this.
Yes.
So I'm sure she was thinking like, okay, if I don't get this, as she's actively trying to, I think it pull
Yeah.
the
Like the circle out of the little metal. She
yeah,
to get the
like
rope out.
yes, to get the rope out, she's thinking, I mean, as she's actively doing that, she's probably thinking 5 lines ahead, like, okay, if I can't pull this out, what can I say? What can I do? How can we rewrite this now?
For sure.
And that's, God, that is my worst nightmare.
Uh, yeah, improving on the stage for a stage show that doesn't have improv is probably terrifying. I couldn't imagine or think that quickly on my feet.
I mean, and that's ad-libbing. I mean, it's the name of the game. Everybody's had to do it for sure more than once in their life if they've been on stage. Some people thrive in that environment, and some people do not.
You know, you had made mention of the monologue by Jeff Skowron of Wadsworth. which I think that there was two characters specifically that were really, I thought were really good in this one, and they were ones that had been there for a while. And there was Wadsworth, who had a lot of physical comedy. He had a lot of monologuing. You could tell that he was definitely kind of the narrator of the show, and he was kind of guiding them a lot that night into like from scene to scene and to make sure that things were happening. And you could tell that there was a lot of like almost pressure on Jeff's shoulders to make that show go off without a hitch. But I really liked Mr. Green, and I think that this has to go with the comedy of it. He was there was a lot of physical comedy that he portrayed with his body across the stage, and to me that was hilarious. What did you like that? Did you like the physical comedy of his character?
I mean, it was the most of the most, and so and that particular, like, I think there were a couple different tropes that they were kind of, throwing in there, and so I was just like, oh, this again, this is the joke. So
he's the dandy, right?
Yeah, and I'm like, whew, that's tired. Like, and that's just probably also 1,000% a bias thing, and I know it's supposed to be comedy and funny. I'm just like, we couldn't think of anything else. This is the one. This is the thing. But in the same breath, I think he got the most laughs.
He did, and I think part of it, like I'm thinking of like the physicality that he had with his body. I'm going back to the scene specifically where the chandelier drops and it goes in slow motion, and he slow motion does like the limbo until he's on the ground while having complete control of his body, which I think is just shows how talented he was. And so for me, that kind of like that's why he deserves a lot of the praise for the show, because not only again he's helping to carry the show because he's been there a while, but he also does a lot of this heavy physical humor for the show that a lot of the other characters don't have.
Well, I mean, yeah, he like basically full out matrixed.
Yes.
some Terminator, but yeah, I mean, he carries much of the show. With he's probably the most physical aside from Wadsworth, I think. And that is the characterization. Like,
right.
He somehow all of the bodies are on him. Somehow he's the blood and the germaphobe type, everything, and then of course the ending. So
yeah.
I mean, at the same time, I mean, I definitely appreciated him as an actor, like as a literal actor. I think that takes a lot, and it was just the right amount of personification to make you wonder. Like you left kind of still wondering who he actually is, like character-wise. Who is he really? Whereas everyone else, like, it still kind of felt true to who they were being portrayed as.
It's funny you say that because I remember that about the film too, and I remember that about Mr. Green never feeling true to who he was, because you didn't know who he was until the end, and you still don't really know who he is. I mean, from that first moment that you meet him, like the physical comedy of he crosses his legs, it sits down, but he like crosses his legs up and his body falls down. Like there's just like there's this oddity to him of like that, like a normal person would, like when you're told to sit, would sit to the ground, and he does it in the air. Very odd, very strange, but the rest of them are very much caricatures that you recognize and that you would know and you would assume are in this game that you've played as a child. Well, if you listen to episode 1, you find out RJ did not play this as a child, but I digress.
It's fine.
Don't with this show though, there's lots of different kinds of humor. Was there a specific, like there's like deadpanning, there's the jokes that are trying to get you to laugh. There's the fourth wall breaks. There's the looking at the audiences. A lot of it felt very old school comedy tropes. But was there anything that like you felt worked really well with the show, or was there types of humor that you think didn't fit well with the show?
I mean, I think it was all in alignment with what people's expectations were. I mean, you have the transition scenes of running in place, and um, yeah, the physical comedy, even the most violent parts were just like so fake, right? Like
Sure.
the was it the knife to the head or the pipe, and just like the fact that it was obviously like plastered on his it was a piece of plastic on his head, like it's just as slapstick as it comes.
Yeah, it was almost to the point where it looked cheap, but it worked for it. It didn't need a lot of money put into this because it wasn't supposed to be like convincing that person was dead. It was almost like watching a show being put on, if that makes sense. Like you know what I mean, like a meta-ness to it, of like a show within a show almost.
Well, and I think that plays to like the gameliness of it. Just this plastic feeling, like everything felt plasticky. Even down to, I think, one of the first scenes when they're running around and the colonel pulls out like what I think is the game board. It's a map, but
yes,
that is the game board, right? So all these little jabs and the physical, like the candlestick in the cop's head, just like clearly just like placed. It's and the cook, I think, was the most obvious one, where the pool of blood was just like this literal chunk of red material. Yeah, it's supposed to, like, you're like, oh, they're dead.
Yes. Like
But
almost like high school performances, but like with a caliber of actors who were good at their craft. You know what I mean? But you speak about the game board, but right before that, Mrs. Scarlet, and I don't know who she was with, it might have been Professor Plum, but they came out and they had pieces of paper that they were kind of marking down, which is
yes,
also a part of the game.
yep, yeah. All the ploys, got to wrap it all together.
And this kind of even goes into the setting, the set design, and the lighting and stuff like that, with the level of humor of like when you say someone's arrived and the lights flicker and the lightning goes off, and the rooms that from the game that fold out and they look like the board games, and then they fold back in. Like there was some really cool pieces to the set design, but it all again seemed like everything was tied back to the humor, which again makes sense for this show.
Yes, and I will say, like, even the set itself felt flat. Even though
Yes.
there were pieces that came out and such, like the doors weren't real. They were flat doors.
Yes.
Everything was thin, and of course, like that could also just be like budget, but
Sure.
it lends itself to the show because, yeah, like even dramatically slamming a door, it was like paper, like it just like shut. So, and yeah, the lighting, even when he's doing the recap at the end very quickly, like mentioning there were dogs barking and there was lightning and it was raining and like all these things to set the scene, right? Because without them, like for sure it would the atmosphere would just feel completely different.
For sure. Part of me wonders about the set because I agree. It did feel like some of it looked cheap, and I was wondering again if this is like the tour budget, you know. But then there's also was the mechanisms of the rooms that would swing out, which felt like a higher budget. So for your point of view, do you feel like this was like an intentionality thing, or do you think this was a budget thing, or do you think it was a mixture of both?
I think it was purposeful. I think if they wanted a real set door, I mean, they have enough time to install it as a set, right? So
sure.
But I think it plays again into the board game idea, into the comically thin, um, even pulling out the library or moving, flipping those rooms, like it's supposed to be light, it's supposed to be funny, it's um, you're almost supposed to see through it. It's
Yes.
not meant to be real life. It's not meant to imitate real life. It's meant to imitate a game.
Yes. And it almost felt like you were watching your childlike self play the game. Like that's how I pictured it sometimes in my head. You know, it was very, there wasn't a fully formed picture of what this was in your head. You know, it was almost like Scooby-Doo, you know, like it feels cheap and fake because it's a board game coming to life in your head.
Yeah. Agreed.
So before we wrap up, obviously we have to talk about our rewatchability and our ratings. So how would you rate this show? Like if you had to give it a score or a grade, where would you be? And I'll start this one off. I'll give you some time to think about it. Having seen the show, having played the game, I'm going to give this a C, like a C plus maybe. Like you're passing. The nostalgic factor I didn't feel it. And again, I wonder if this is because I didn't watch the film very much. I watched it a few times. I've seen it maybe once or twice as a teenager, once or twice as an adult. But I didn't get the same laughter that I noticed other people, like your friends that you brought, who were roaring with laughter, who were just a little bit older than us, who probably were a little more experienced with the show. I hope she doesn't listen to this and think experience means old. That's not what I mean here. But like, there was a little more connectivity to it. I feel like they would probably rate it higher. But for me, this hit some nostalgic factor, but it was just enough for like a passing grade.
Yeah, I would probably give it like a D.
Okay.
Not, and let me clarify, not the actors themselves, but the production. I thought what they did with what they were doing was very well done. I can understand why the show didn't go to Broadway. I can understand why it has, probably seen better days. There truly, there is no pull for me for this show. Like, there's no reason for me to tell people to go see it unless they like absolutely are enamored with the movie.
Sure.
So, I mean, I personally would not go see it again. And I always hate to say that for shows because I know that people put so much work and time and effort into them. But if we're talking strictly production value, probably say a D.
I say that this is one of those shows, and I think I'm going to preface this by saying too, I would not go see it for the prices that they were. This did not feel like a show. This did not feel like a show that could take in the price tags that were given there, unless you were again banging on the nostalgia factor. But if you take out the prices from this as well, I would not go see this unless somebody really wanted to go see it. I think that is the key takeaway here. So like, this is a show you go see with somebody and you could almost get enjoyment out of it with them. I know my friends talked about having watched this film. They really wanted to go see it. And so they were excited about it. And so like going to see it with someone like that would be exciting. I could not imagine taking your sister or your mom to see this without them having a relationship to it and enjoying it with them or having them enjoy it. I think my mom, who has seen the movie once, I don't think she would get the connection out of it either. This is for hardcore fans who are deeply related to the source material. And so for that, I probably wouldn't see it either again. Why does that feel so mean to say?
I mean, like to be fair, we're overall very, very nice. And I think our the content, again, and even over the last episode and this one, the acting and the comedy and the talent were high. The writing and the production is just lower for those who, once again, sometimes there's just not an appeal for people in the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
And
want
so,
to, and you just can't.
absolutely. I think that we went into this with open minds. I think that we just walked away with like, it was good, but it wasn't great. It was a fun time, but this isn't one that I'm going to talk about with a ton of people unless they again are very excited about it.
It was a one night only.
Literally. So for those who have that, go and see it and enjoy it. And if you have different opinions, please let us know. We'd love to hear who likes these shows and why you liked it. And like, this is the fun thing about theater, is that everybody has a different perspective, everybody has a different experience, and you can enjoy something and one person can dislike it, and we can both move on with our lives. So with that, we are actually done with our part 2 of our Clue discussion. So stay tuned as we continue to bring you more shows from Broadway and here locally in Michigan on future episodes of The Cosmic Curtain. Thanks again for joining us in our box seats. Until next curtain call.